Thank you, CEO. Thank you very much for coming. What I'm going to do is, before I start reading, I'm just going to go through how we're going to proceed today. So first I'm going to read the press statement. When I'm done, there are one or two issues that have been in the press that we think need clarity, and those issues we are going to highlight, and we are going to give you an opportunity to ask questions on those particular items. And after we've done that, you are then free to ask any question pertaining to rugby. I'm sure we've got all the resources we need here to answer any question. Thank you. So numerous events have taken place in the last couple of weeks that have forced us to relook at how we're doing business and whether the current structures that we have fit the purpose. We have come to the conclusion that some changes are necessary for us to deliver our primary mandate, which is promoting the game of rugby and creating a conducive environment for rugby to thrive. The changes are designed to achieve the following: prioritize development and long-term goals of the union, instill discipline in all our communication structures, eliminate overlapping structures, increase efficiency and accountability, take steps to avoid relegation. The following will be our action plan going forward. Point number 1. In order to maintain a place in the top tiers of the Africa Cup, we believe it is prudent for us to focus on grassroots development and our Get Into Rugby program. For this reason, we have appointed Vice President North, Mr. Lawson Tongwiza, to take charge of that portfolio. Point number 2, in pursuit of the same goal, we have also appointed Brendan Dawson to spearhead an under-20 development academy, which will be based at Hartsfield in Bulawayo, the original home of rugby in Zimbabwe. As an additional resource to the trust, Vice President South, Mr. Martin Shone, will now serve as a trustee. In order to strengthen our administrative processes within ZRU, a substantive manager will be appointed for the Sables, who will report directly to the CEO. An announcement will be made in the next few days. In recognition of the importance of player welfare, we have appointed Mr. Shingi Mpofu, a ZRU board member and a former Sables player, as the player representative. He will act as a bridge between the board, the ZRU board, and the players. Players will now be required to only communicate through their manager, and any grievances will be escalated to the board through Mr. Shingi Mpofu. There will be no communication between players and the Sables Trust, or indeed between the players and the Presidium, other than the communication that is dictated by common courtesy. ZRU will immediately employ an administrator for the Gold Cup campaign who will focus on Sables welfare. This includes the payment of allowances, accommodation, transport, medical, personal needs, etc. Mr. Peter de Villiers will now identify and recommend a local assistant coach to help him complete the Gold Cup campaign. There are 2 fixtures remaining, Namibia and Uganda. Mr. Peter de Villiers will be reporting to the ZRU CEO, Mr. Sifiso Made. As part of the eligibility for remaining on the team, Sables players will be required to sign the existing code of conduct and player contracts. This will, among other things, address social media etiquettes and allowances, the amounts, and the dates when the payments will be made. For the remaining Uganda game, we are going to send an advance party, which will be headed by VP South, who will arrive before the touring party to ensure that all conditions are favorable for our squad. The Sables technical team will now be assisting by providing a selection panel that is going to help with the Sables squad. I thank you. During the last couple of weeks, couple of days, a lot has been said about our team in Tunisia, and in particular the issue of visas. Now, I would like to, at this point in time, ask the manager who was responsible and on the coalface on the day the event happened, so that perhaps tomorrow we can have the correct story about the visa issue. Mr. Manager, please could you assist us?
Thank you. Prior to leaving for Tunisia, we had received an official document from the Tunisian Rugby Union, which was there to assist us when we got to the immigration in Tunisia. Having spoken to the president of Tunisia Rugby Board, he assured us that that document would help us obviously get easy access into Tunisia, and we would get help from the official police in Tunisia. When we arrived in Tunisia, all seemed well. We were all obviously jet-lagged, tired, and I went as head of delegation to the visa section with the document and players' passports. It wasn't as rosy or as easy as we thought it would be, as I only got served a bit later, maybe 3-4 hours later. In then getting a response as to what we needed, the visa authorities then told us we needed to pay a visa for each player. Now, my response was I would get back to them, as we needed to consult with the other members we had in the delegation. So when I consulted Peter de Villiers and Abigail, who was our physio, who's also a board member, to say what is the way forward. We had not budgeted for it. We do have the money, but we had not budgeted for visas, as the document had not specified a figure. We then were told to clarify with the Tunisian Rugby Board, which took us more time as we tried to communicate with the Tunisian officials, which also proved to be difficult, as we needed to make calls and we didn't have access to communication when we were at the airport. Eventually, when we had an official from the Tunisian Rugby Union coming to assist us, he then took over the whole situation, and after a few minutes cleared us. So we were all cleared to leave the airport and head to our hotel. As we are about to leave as we are about to depart from the airport, we were then stopped by one of the Tunisian rugby board members, who then instructed us we needed to still pay for the visas. This obviously didn't go down well with the players, who had been frustrated, had been delayed at the airport for about 7 hours. In doing that, I gladly decided to comply and went back to the immigration services, where I paid for the visas. Now, it was not a situation of us not having the money. We had the money, but we had not budgeted for it. And eventually when we paid, it also took another 30-40 minutes before they cleared us. And after all visas had been paid for, we were then told we were free to go. But they did not hand us our passports. So we tried by all means to persuade them to give us our passports, and they said they would return them when they thought they'd gone through all security checks for each member of the delegation we had. So we left the airport without any passports going to our hotel. So that's exactly what transpired with the visa situation.
The other issue that was raised was the article in the H Metro. We do have a player here. We've got our two players here. And I'll ask Doc to comment on the article that was in the H Metro, that the players had no confidence and they wanted the administration to resign.
So that article was written. It was written while we were in Tunisia. It was written, I think, the day after we arrived in Tunisia. We were all very disgruntled because of the treatment we had received from the Tunisians, and also the fact that we hadn't at that time received any payments. So we decided to sit down as a team and communicate with the leadership. So the article was an article written, I guess, out of anger, and we were just in a bad place. We'd been, as the manager said, held up in the airport for 7 hours, slept on the street. So it was an article which was written when we were not in sober minds. So when we came back to Zim, we then met with the Presidium, and we discussed everything that happened. And I think we can confidently say that we support them as much as they support us.
All right. I will then open it out. You can ask any question that you'd like to ask. Yes, start from the right.
Okay. I would want to maybe a bit of clarity on Shingi's new role, because from my understanding he was already a player's representative. So what's his new role now?
All right. So what has happened now is that in streamlining our structures, we have realized that it is important for the board to know exactly what is going on as far as the players are concerned. We felt it necessary and prudent that Mr. Shingi Mpofu, since he's been a Sables player and is able to communicate with the players at a level where they understand each other, it is easier for us to get any grievances or any problems that occur within the squad timeously, so that we can act as a board before anything gets out of hand. Yes, sir.
You have spoken about the changes within the technical team. Now, will this not affect the rhythm? Will this not affect maybe even in terms of players, the way that they've been able to relate with the technical team since Brendan Dawson has now been moved to another appointment? Have you taken some of those things into consideration as you're then going to be selecting that local assistant coach?
We had a marathon meeting. I think it lasted almost 3-4 hours with the technical team. And we felt that because of our original aim, which was to qualify for the World Cup, this aim had not materialized. So we said, let's go back to the drawing board. What is the best situation for Zimbabwe Rugby going forward? We came to the conclusion that it was better for us to relook at our structures, refocus, and start developing players that can keep us, A, in the Gold Cup campaign, and number 2, in the hunt for the next World Cup. So it's the long-term goals that we have now refocused on, and we thought it was better for us to focus on the long-term goals now that the short-term goal has not been met. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question, I'm not sure who's the appropriate person to address it. Concerning the trip to Tunisia, what is the standard procedure when touring or in terms of visa, the money for the visas? Because from my understanding, you say that the money was there, but it was not budgeted. Was that on the part of Tunisia when they wrote that they will sort out? Was it a part, or did they want to facilitate, or they promised to pay for the visa?
I think that's where the miscommunication came in. When we received the letter, as we read it, we understood it to mean the visas would be waived. That there was no need to pay for the visas. But when we arrived, they understood it to say they were going to facilitate. So it was a total miscommunication on both sides.
Okay. But what is the standard procedure in terms of when Morocco came? What was the standard procedure in terms of visas?
All right. The situation varies from country to country. When Morocco came, we organized and pre-cleared them before they arrived. So it depends on, it varies from country to country. Yeah. Any other question? Yes.
In terms of fair and fine, there was a miscommunication, but has there been any form of communication from us to maybe Rugby Africa, because it doesn't look like it's a first-time incident for teams that would be touring North African countries. They tend to face quite a number of these issues, and I don't think with Tunisia it's a first time, even with us as Zimbabwe. How far have you taken up that issue?
In fact, on the very first, this incident happened on the Thursday, and on the very night when the incident happened, I wrote to Africa Rugby, to the general manager, and I copied the president of Africa Rugby, and expressed my disquiet over the issue, and this was escalated to the executive committee of Rugby Africa. And I know that there are some deliberations that are going on, and we will receive communication with regards of what decision would have been made in terms of the issues of that nature. Yes.
Can you tell us more about the role Dawson will be playing, and is a particular team he's overseeing, a junior development team, or a bit more insight on that appointment?
Well, for the rugby fraternity, I think it's common knowledge that we have an under-20 structure. We don't have a national under-21 structure, and we don't have an under-23 structure. And this is where we have a very robust schools structure where a lot of talent is being nurtured. But we don't have a bridge from the schools to the Sables. And this is now an attempt to groom players that will in future be the Sables of this country. Yes.
And still on that issue, is Farai still still the under-20 coach? And if so, how is he going to be working with Dawson?
I think it's two separate structures. Yes, Bob is still the coach, but he's in under-20. So there's two different structures. So from under-20, so Bob feeds into Dawson, because it's two different structures. So it's from 20 to 23. That's the age group that he'll be looking after. Yes.
And if we may clarify, since some of these structures are now coming into play, I'm sure maybe we can direct this to the Sables Trust. Most of the finances that we had now were geared towards us qualifying for the World Cup. Do we have the resources that will be able to take care of these new structures as you're now establishing them?
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the way to look at it is this, you're quite correct. The resources that had been mobilized were really focused on our World Cup campaign. We'll obviously go back to the drawing board as well. We'll sit down with Dorsey and say, for budgetary requirements, what is it that you need? And we will deploy resources for that purpose. Yeah.
So in essence, they are there.
Oh yes, I mean we've got a healthy bank balance. Don't worry about that. It's a very healthy thing. Yeah, I might add perhaps, and I think you'll see from the statement that Dawson will be based at Hartsfield. I think you all know what's going on at Hartsfield in terms of the renovation of those premises. So this is all it all feeds into that. Hartsfield will become a high-performance center. Dawson is based there, or will be based there, and essentially nurturing the next group of Sables, as the President has indicated.
Yes.
Question to Shingi. Your thoughts on your new role, and what sort of, other than the obvious of addressing grievances, what else should we expect from you?
Okay. My role is not basically just for grievances. It's a communication pathway for the players to the board and the board to the players. So it's not a one-way street. We're not there to fight each other, or the players to be fighting the board. But it's a way that the board and the players can work together so that we can have one goal, one vision.
Yes.
You had these meetings to evaluate more of long-term goals. But with the two games that are left now, Uganda and Namibia, and the threat of relegation, have you addressed that? Has that been tabled on how to fix the immediate situation that the Sables find themselves in?
Yes. You will notice right now that Peter de Villiers is not here. The reason why he's not here is that he's actually strategizing. He's working on a document, on a blueprint that he's going to present to the board in terms of how we are going to avoid relegation. So that's his focus right now.
If we may also ask in terms of clarity, we may not have had privilege to have seen the terms of the contract. Seeing that we are not able to achieve the qualification for the World Cup, what are the terms for Peter de Villiers? How long will he be with us? How long will he be sticking around? Does the contract end because he hasn't achieved, or does he continue?
Well, look, our major objective was to qualify for the World Cup. Peter has got a 2-year contract with us. So after the Gold Cup campaign, we are going to sit down with Peter and say, this is where we are. How do we proceed now from where we are? So it's going to be an issue of dialogue. He's got very good skills that we require, and it also depends on what his plans are. We don't know how he feels after the Gold Cup campaign. So it will be a discussion that we are going to have after we've finished the Gold Cup campaign.
As a follow-up to your question, you said there was a 2-year contract.
Yes.
And you're going to reevaluate after the Gold Cup.
No, I didn't say I was going to reevaluate.
Sit down, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Was there a performance clause in his contract?
This is what I just indicated now, that one of the objectives was to qualify for the World Cup. So that was the major short-term objective. There are others, but that was the major objective short-term.
There is a line of thought that circulates that if we get relegated to silver, it's not a bad thing. We can build up from there, build a team of a winning culture, and go back to this Gold Cup when it matters for the next World Cup cycle. What's your take on that, considering that it's a possibility that we might not remain in gold?
I think we need to go back and reassess and look at where we are.
Kind of feed into the national teams. is there the same structure, also the same initiative being applied to the women's section?
The women's section, yes. In fact, I was in discussions with the director of rugby. We have a very brilliant women's under-18 team, and we were talking about increasing game time for them and keeping them together. We are looking at a possible twinning arrangement where everywhere where the Sables go, we take the women's team. The school structures are very solid in terms of women. What we need to look at is perhaps the rugby, the club side of women. That's where we need to look at how we can modify or strengthen those structures to get us where we want to be.
Okay, so looking at strengthening those rugby structures, will there also be an initiative towards the under-21 level as well, to also bridge from the school structure into the club structure and also into the national team?
Yes, that is the ultimate idea, but our problem, of course, will be resources. We were with the World Rugby representative, Mr. Stefnell. He has indicated that there are resources that we can tap into in order to strengthen those structures. So we will be employing an individual who will focus on tapping into those resources so that we can strengthen those structures for women.
And finally, what's your take on the recent performance at Craven Week from the age groups?
It's been very encouraging. If you look at the results that we had, I think the rankings, probably on average, we got rankings of 3, 4 on most of the teams. That is very, very heartening. It means our rugby structures are working at the bottom, and we need to make sure that we keep those structures and we harness them into that section, that void, that 20 to 23 area where we have not been strong.